My name is Jennifer Hayes, and I've never forgotten the first time I met my future mother-in-law, Patricia Morrison. It was a crisp October evening in 2015, and I was 26 years old, nervous and excited to meet the family of the man I loved. My boyfriend Michael had warned me that his mother could be a bit particular, but I was confident. I was well educated, had a good job, and came from a decent family. What could go wrong? Everything, as it turned out. Michael and I arrived at Patricia's mansion, and it was a mansion, with white columns and a circular driveway at exactly 6 p.m. A housekeeper answered the door and led us to an enormous dining room where Patricia sat at the head of a table that could seat 20 people. She was 58 years old, dressed in what I later learned was a designer suit, with perfectly styled silver hair and cold blue eyes that examined me like I was a specimen under a microscope. "So you're Jennifer," she said, not standing or offering her hand. "Michael has told me about you." "It's wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Morrison," I said, smiling warmly. "Sit," she commanded, gesturing to a chair far down the table from where she sat her day. Dinner was awkward. Patricia asked me questions that felt more like an interrogation than a conversation. "Where did you go to college?" "State University, ma'am. I graduated with honors in finance." She sniffed. "State school. How economical. What do your parents do?" "My father is a mechanic. My mother is a teacher." "How blue-collar," Patricia said, as if I'd told her my parents were criminals. Then came the question that would define our relationship for the next 8 years. "And what do you do for work, Jennifer?" "I'm a bank teller at First National Bank," I said proudly. "I've been there for 3 years, and I'm hoping to move into a loan officer position soon." Patricia's laugh was cold and sharp, like ice cracking. "A bank teller? You're a bank teller?" She looked at Michael. "Darling, you're dating a bank teller?" "Mom, Jennifer has a good job," Michael started. "A good job?" Patricia interrupted. "She counts other people's money all day. She's essentially a glorified cashier." I felt my face burn with embarrassment and anger. "It's an important job, Mrs. Morrison. Banking is the foundation of our economy." "Please." Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "Don't lecture me about banking. My late husband was an investment banker at Goldman Sachs. He managed billions of dollars. You hand people their deposit slips." Michael squeezed my hand under the table, but I could see he wasn't going to defend me. He never did when it came to his mother. "Jennifer is very good at her job," Michael said weakly. "She helps a lot of people." "I'm sure she does," Patricia said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I'm sure those people appreciate having someone to count their pennies for them." The rest of the dinner was torture. Every time I tried to speak, Patricia would either ignore me or make another cutting comment about my little job at the bank. When we finally left, I cried in the car. "She hates me," I said to Michael. "She doesn't hate you," Michael said, though he didn't sound convinced. "She's just protective. She'll warm up to you eventually." She never did. Michael and I got engaged a year later. I was thrilled, but my joy was dampened by the knowledge that Patricia would be my mother-in-law, and I was right to worry. Patricia made wedding planning a nightmare. She criticized everything: my dress, so plain, my venue choice, a hotel, how common, my guest list, "You're inviting mechanics and teachers?" to my son's wedding. But the worst was when she found out about our honeymoon plans. "We're going to Hawaii," I told her excitedly. "We saved up for a whole year." Patricia laughed that terrible laugh. "You saved up? How much could a bank teller possibly save? What are you staying in? A motel?" "It's a nice resort, actually," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm sure it is, dear," Patricia said, her voice condescending. "Michael, darling, if you'd married someone more established, you could have honeymooned in Paris or the Maldives. But I suppose Hawaii is nice if you're on a budget." Michael said nothing. He never did. At the wedding, Patricia wore white, yes, white, to her son's wedding, and spent the reception telling anyone who would listen that her son was marrying down, but she was trying to be supportive. I cried on my wedding night, and not from happiness. For the next 6 years, Patricia never missed an opportunity to mock my job. At family dinners, "Jennifer, still counting pennies at the bank? When are you going to get a real career?" At holidays, I bought you a calculator for Christmas, Jennifer. For your little job. At birthday parties. Jennifer works at a bank, you know. She's a teller. That means she helps people deposit their checks. Isn't that sweet? She would introduce me to her wealthy friends as my son's wife. She works at a bank. With an emphasis that made it clear she thought I was beneath them all. She never asked about my day, my aspirations, or my feelings. To Patricia, I was just the poor girl who had trapped her precious son. But what hurt most was that Michael never defended me. Not once in 6 years did he tell his mother to stop. That's just how she is, he would say. Ignore her. But you can't ignore that kind of cruelty year after year. It wears you down, makes you doubt yourself, makes you feel small. I started to believe maybe Patricia was right. Maybe I was just a bank teller. Maybe my job wasn't important. Maybe I wasn't good enough for Michael or his family. But then something changed. In 2021, after 8 years at First National Bank, I was promoted. Not to loan officer, as I'd originally hoped, but to something better, Assistant Vice President of Commercial Lending. It was a huge promotion. I would be overseeing millions of dollars in business loans, working directly with entrepreneurs and business owners, making decisions that would affect people's livelihoods and dreams. My salary tripled. I got an office with a window. I got a title that commanded respect. I was so proud and excited to tell Michael. "That's great, honey," he said, barely looking up from his phone. "Does this mean you'll work longer hours?" That was his only question. Not congratulations. Not, "I'm proud of you." Just concern about how it would affect him. I didn't tell Patricia. I knew she would just find a way to diminish it. But of course, someone told her. A few weeks later, at Sunday dinner, Patricia brought it up. "I heard you got a little promotion at your little bank, Jennifer," she said, cutting her steak with precise movements. "Yes, I'm Assistant Vice President of Commercial Lending now," I said, trying to sound casual. "How adorable," Patricia said. "They gave you a big title to make you feel important. Banks do that, you know. They hand out vice president titles like candy to make tellers feel better about themselves." "It's not a meaningless title," I said, my voice tight. "I oversee commercial loans. I approve or deny funding for businesses. It's a significant responsibility." "I'm sure it feels significant to you, dear," Patricia said, smiling her cold smile. "But let's be honest, you're still working at a community bank. It's not exactly Wall Street, is it?" What Patricia didn't know, what nobody knew except my boss, was that I was brilliant at my job. I had a gift for analyzing businesses and predicting their success or failure. I could look at a business plan and financial statements and see things other people missed. I knew when someone was a good risk and when they weren't. In my first year as Assistant VP, I approved 47 commercial loans totaling $12 million. Only one of those businesses failed a 98% success rate that was unheard of in commercial lending. My second year was even better. I approved $18 million in loans with a 100% success rate. Every single business I funded succeeded and paid back their loans with interest. The bank president, Mr. Chen, called me into his office. "Jennifer, your instincts are extraordinary," he said. "I've been in banking for 35 years, and I've never seen anyone with your talent for evaluating risk." "Thank you, sir," I said, feeling genuinely proud. "I want to promote you to Vice President of Commercial Lending. You'll oversee the entire department. You'll be making decisions on loans up to $50 million. $50 million. I would be one of the most powerful people at the bank, making decisions that could change lives and build communities." I accepted immediately. I was 32 years old, and I was running a major department at a bank with $2 billion in assets. I was successful, powerful, and respected. But at home, Michael barely noticed, and Patricia still called me the bank teller. In January 2023, Patricia was diagnosed with cancer. Pancreatic cancer, stage 3, aggressive and deadly. The doctors gave her a year to live, maybe 2 if she responded well to treatment. For the first time in our relationship, I felt genuine sympathy for Patricia. Cancer is terrible, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone, not even her. Michael was devastated. Despite how difficult she was, he loved his mother deeply. "I need to be there for her," Michael said. "She's going to need help with appointments, treatment, everything." "Of course," I said. "I'll help however I can." We started spending more time at Patricia's mansion. She had nurses and housekeepers, but Michael wanted to be present. And where Michael went, I went. Patricia was weaker now, thinner, her silver hair falling out from chemotherapy. But her cruelty hadn't diminished one bit. "Jennifer, still playing banker?" she said from her bed one afternoon. "Shouldn't you be at work counting money?" "I'm taking time off to help Michael," I said quietly. "How noble," Patricia said. "Though I suppose anyone can count money. They probably don't even miss you." I bit my tongue and said nothing. Patricia's cancer treatment was expensive. Very expensive. She had insurance, but it didn't cover everything. The experimental treatments she wanted, the private nurses, the special medications, they added up quickly. After 6 months of treatment, Patricia's financial advisor came to see her with troubling news. Michael and I were there when he delivered it. "Patricia, I need to be honest with you," the advisor said. "Your medical expenses are draining your assets faster than anticipated. You've spent almost $800,000 on treatment so far." "So?" Patricia said weakly. "I have plenty of money." "You did have plenty of money," the advisor said gently. "But between the medical bills and some bad investments your previous advisor made, your liquid assets are almost gone. You have about $50,000 left in accessible funds." "What about my house?" Patricia asked. "The house is worth $2.3 million, but it would take months to sell, and you need money now for your next round of treatment." "What about my investment accounts?" "They're mostly tied up in long-term investments that would cost you penalties to access early." Patricia's face went pale, paler than it already was from the cancer. "How much do I need for the next treatment?" she asked. $175,000, the advisor said. "And that's just for the next 3 months. The total treatment plan will cost around $400,000 more." "I don't have that," Patricia whispered. "You'll need to take out a loan," the advisor said. "Use your house as collateral. Any bank would approve it. Your house is worth more than enough." Patricia nodded weakly. "Set it up." Michael looked distraught. His mother, who had always been wealthy and powerful, was suddenly vulnerable and in need. "Mom, don't worry," Michael said. "We'll figure this out. Jennifer and I can help. I don't need charity from a bank teller," Patricia snapped, even in her weakened state. "Actually," I said quietly, "you do need help from a bank teller. Or rather, from a bank vice president." Patricia looked at me, confused. "The loan you need," I continued, "will have to come from a bank. And here's something you don't know. I'm not a bank teller anymore, Patricia. I haven't been for 3 years. I'm vice president of commercial lending at First National Bank. I oversee all major loans, including home equity loans like the one you need." The room went silent. "What?" Patricia said. "I've been a bank vice president for 3 years," I repeated. "I approve or deny loans up to $50 million. The loan you need for your cancer treatment? That will come across my desk. I'll be the one deciding whether you get it or not." Patricia's face showed pure shock. "That's impossible. You're a teller." "I was a teller," I corrected. 8 years ago. Since then, I've worked my way up through the bank. I'm now one of the highest-ranking loan officers in the region. And First National Bank is the bank your advisor will send your loan application to, because we have the best rates for medical home equity loans." Patricia didn't believe me at first. She thought I was lying to make myself seem important. But the next day, her financial advisor confirmed it. "Yes, Jennifer Hayes is indeed the VP of Commercial Lending at First National," he said. "I've worked with her before on other client loans. She's highly respected in the banking community. They call her the Golden Gut because her loan approval rate is extraordinary." Patricia looked like she might faint. "So when you apply for your loan," the advisor continued, "it will go to Jennifer's department. She'll be reviewing your financials and making the approval decision." "No," Patricia said firmly. "We'll go to a different bank." "You could," the advisor said. "But First National has the best rates and terms. Going elsewhere would cost you tens of thousands more in interest. And frankly, Patricia, you don't have tens of thousands to spare." Patricia looked at Michael desperately. There must be another way. "Mom, if Jennifer can get you the loan you need for treatment, does it matter?" Michael said. "It matters," Patricia said. "I won't be indebted to her. I won't have that woman holding this over me." "That woman is my wife," Michael said, and I was shocked to hear him finally defending me. And that woman might be the only person who can save your life. It took Patricia 3 days to accept reality. She needed the loan. First National had the best terms, and I would be the one reviewing her application. The application came to my desk on a Monday morning. I recognized Patricia's name immediately. Loan request. $425,000. Purpose. Medical expenses. Cancer treatment. Collateral. Primary residence. Valued at $2.3 million. Applicant. Patricia Morrison. I stared at the application for a long time. This was the woman who had mocked me for 8 years, who had made me feel worthless and small, who had called me a glorified cashier and laughed at my career. Now she needed me. She needed my approval to get the money that would pay for treatment that might save her life. I had all the power. I could deny the loan. I could tell her she didn't qualify. I could make her suffer the way she'd made me suffer. It would be the perfect revenge. I did what I always did. I reviewed the application professionally and thoroughly. Patricia's financials were complicated. She had assets, but they were tied up. Her income from investments had decreased due to market conditions. Her credit score was good, but her debt-to-income ratio was borderline. If this application had come from anyone else, I would have approved it without hesitation. The house was worth 5 times the loan amount. Even if Patricia died, which was a real possibility, the house could be sold to pay back the loan. It was a safe bet for the bank, but I wanted Patricia to sweat. I wanted her to feel the fear and uncertainty I'd felt for 8 years, while she made me question my worth. So I didn't approve it right away. I scheduled a meeting. Patricia Morrison's loan application requires an in-person interview, I told my assistant. Schedule her to come in next Tuesday. Patricia would have to come to my bank, to my office, and ask me, the bank teller she'd mocked, for help. Patricia arrived at First National Bank on Tuesday at 10 a.m., accompanied by Michael. She looked terrible, thin, pale, wearing a wig to cover her hair loss. Part of me felt guilty for making her come in. She was clearly very sick. But another part, the part that remembered 8 years of cruelty, felt satisfied. My assistant brought them to my office. It was a corner office on the 3rd floor with large windows overlooking downtown. My name was on the door. Jennifer Hayes, Vice President, Commercial Lending. Patricia stared at the nameplate like she couldn't believe it was real. Please sit down, I said, gesturing to the chairs across from my desk. Patricia sat slowly, painfully. Michael helped her, and then sat beside her. Thank you for seeing us, Michael said. Of course, I replied professionally. Let's discuss your loan application, Patricia. Patricia said nothing. She just stared at her hands. I've reviewed your financials, I continued, looking at the papers on my desk. Your situation is complicated. But you can approve the loan, right? Michael asked anxiously. The house is worth way more than the loan amount. That's true, I said. The collateral is more than sufficient. However, there are other factors to consider. Your mother's income has decreased significantly. Her debt-to-income ratio is borderline. And given her medical condition, there's significant risk that she might not survive long enough to repay the loan. Patricia flinched at that. If she dies, the house would be sold to repay the loan. But that process takes time and costs money, I continued. From the bank's perspective, this loan carries more risk than normal. So you're denying it? Michael said, his voice rising with panic. I didn't say that, I replied calmly. I said there are risks to consider. I need to determine whether those risks are acceptable. I looked directly at Patricia. I need to understand why I should approve this loan. Why should I take this risk for you, Patricia? For the first time since she arrived, Patricia looked up at me. Her eyes were filled with tears. Because I'll die without it, she whispered. I'll die. Many people die because they can't afford medical treatment, I said, keeping my voice neutral. That's a tragedy of our healthcare system. But it's not the bank's responsibility to fix it. We're a business. We make decisions based on risk and return. Jennifer, please, Michael said. This is my mother. I know who she is, I said. Patricia, I said, leaning back in my chair. Do you remember what you said to me the first time we met? Patricia looked confused. What? You said I was a glorified cashier. You asked Michael how he could date a bank teller? You implied I was worthless. Jennifer, that was years ago. Michael started. I'm not finished, I said, my voice firm. For 8 years, Patricia has mocked my career. At every family dinner, every holiday, every gathering, she made sure everyone knew that I was just a little bank teller with a little job. I was just joking, Patricia said weakly. No, you weren't joking. You were cruel. You wanted me to feel small and insignificant. You wanted me to believe I wasn't good enough for your son or your family. The office was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. And now, I continued, you need that little bank teller. You need me to approve a loan that will save your life. You need my signature, my authority, my decision. How does that feel, Patricia? Patricia's tears fell freely now. I'm sorry, she whispered. What was that? I asked. I didn't hear you. I'm sorry, Patricia said louder, her voice breaking. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I was wrong. I was cruel and snobbish and wrong. Why? I asked. Why did you treat me that way? Patricia wiped her eyes with a tissue. Because I was jealous. Jealous? Of what? Of your relationship with Michael, Patricia said. He loved you so much. He looked at you the way his father used to look at me, before everything fell apart. I was stunned. Your marriage fell apart? My husband cheated on me, Patricia said bitterly. Multiple times. With multiple women. I stayed with him because of Michael, because of our social position, because of money. But I was miserable. And when he died, I felt relieved more than sad. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. You were everything I wasn't, Jennifer. You were genuinely happy. You loved your job even though it didn't pay much. You didn't care about status or money. And Michael loved you for who you were, not for what you could give him. So you tried to destroy that? I asked. I tried to make you doubt yourself, Patricia admitted. I wanted you to feel as small as I felt. I wanted to drag you down to my level. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I sat there for a long moment, looking at this woman who had tormented me for 8 years. She was sick, dying, desperate, and finally apologizing. I thought about all the times she'd made me cry, all the times she'd made me question my worth, all the years of cruelty and mockery. I thought about how satisfying it would be to deny her loan, to tell her no, to make her beg, to let her die knowing I had the power to save her but chose not to. But then I thought about who I was. Not who Patricia had tried to make me believe I was, but who I really was. I was a professional. I was good at my job. I made decisions based on facts and risk assessment, not personal feelings. And I was a good person. Better than Patricia. Better than this moment of temptation to cruel revenge. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a folder. Inside was the loan approval document, already signed. I approved your loan 3 days ago, I said, sliding the folder across the desk. Patricia and Michael both stared at it in shock. What? Patricia whispered. I approved your loan the day after I received your application, I said. You qualify. The collateral is more than sufficient. Despite your decreased income and health condition, the risk to the bank is acceptable. It's a good loan, and I approved it. But why did you make me come here? Patricia asked. Because I wanted you to see, I said simply. I wanted you to see my office, my title, my authority. I wanted you to understand that I'm not a little bank teller with a little job. I'm a successful professional who got here through hard work and talent. But more than that, I continued, I wanted to hear you apologize. Not because you needed something from me, but because you genuinely realized you were wrong. And I wanted to see if you were capable of that. Patricia was crying openly now. I'm so sorry, Jennifer. I'm sorry for everything. You didn't deserve the way I treated you. No, I didn't, I agreed. But I forgive you. Patricia looked up, surprised. You do? Yes. Because holding on to anger and resentment only hurts me, not you. And because you're dying, Patricia. I'm not going to let you die in debt to medical bills, and I'm not going to let you die thinking I'm as cruel as you were. I stood up and walked around the desk. I knelt beside Patricia's chair and took her frail hand. You're going to get your treatment, I said gently. You're going to fight this cancer. And maybe, if we're lucky, you'll have time to become the mother-in-law I always wished you'd been. Patricia sobbed and squeezed my hand. Thank you. Thank you so much. Michael was crying too. He came over and hugged both of us. Thank you, Jennifer. I'm sorry I never defended you. I'm sorry I let her treat you that way. We'll talk about that later, I said. Right now, let's focus on getting your mother well. Patricia's loan was approved for $425,000. She used the money to pay for cutting-edge cancer treatment at a specialized facility. The treatment was brutal. More chemotherapy, radiation, experimental drugs that made her violently sick. But she fought, and slowly, miraculously, she started to improve. The tumors shrank. Her energy returned. Her hair grew back silver and beautiful. 6 months after getting the loan, Patricia was declared to be in remission. The cancer might come back, the doctors warned, but for now, she was cancer-free. I visited her every week during her treatment. At first, it was awkward. Years of bad history don't disappear overnight. But gradually, we started to have real conversations. Patricia told me about her childhood, her difficult relationship with her own mother, her marriage to a man who didn't respect her. I told her about my dreams, my career goals, my frustrations with Michael's passivity. We were never going to be best friends. Too much damage had been done. But we became something better than enemies. We became family, real family, with honesty and respect. One afternoon, about 8 months after her diagnosis, Patricia asked me to come to her house alone. I need to tell you something, she said, looking serious. We sat in her living room, the same living room where she'd hosted that terrible first dinner years ago. What is it? I asked. I'm changing my will, Patricia said. I'm leaving half of everything to Michael, as planned. But the other half, my half, I'm leaving to you. I was shocked. Patricia, I can't accept. Yes, you can, Patricia interrupted. You saved my life, Jennifer. Not just by approving the loan, but by showing me that kindness is more powerful than cruelty. You could have let me die, and no one would have blamed you. But you didn't. You saved someone who had been terrible to you. I didn't do it for money. I know you didn't. That's exactly why you deserve it, Patricia said firmly. You're a better person than I ever was. And when I die, whenever that is, I want you to have the resources to do good things, to help other people the way you helped me. Patricia, I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept it. Say you'll use it wisely. And say you'll forgive me every day for the rest of my life. I hugged her. I forgive you. I already forgave you. Patricia stayed in remission for a year. It was a good year. She became involved in charity work, particularly helping cancer patients who couldn't afford treatment. She would tell everyone about my daughter-in-law, Jennifer, the brilliant banker who saved my life. It was surreal hearing her praise me after years of mockery, but it felt genuine. Patricia had changed, and so had our relationship. Then, in November 2024, Patricia collapsed at a charity event. The cancer had come back, aggressive and widespread. This time, the doctors were blunt. There was nothing more they could do. Patricia had weeks, maybe a month. We brought her home from the hospital and set up hospice care. Patricia wanted to die in her own bed, in her own home. Michael and I took turns staying with her. She was in pain despite the medication, and she slept most of the time. But she had moments of clarity, and in those moments, she talked. One evening, I was sitting beside Patricia's bed, reading a book, when she suddenly spoke. Jennifer? I'm here, I said, putting the book down. I need to tell you something. About Michael. What about him? Patricia took a labored breath. He's weak. He always has been. I spoiled him, protected him too much. I made him think he was special just because he was born into money. Patricia, you don't need to. Yes, I do, she insisted. You deserve better than Michael. You know that, right? I was quiet. It was something I'd been thinking about for a while but hadn't admitted out loud. He never defended you, Patricia continued. All those years I was cruel to you. He just stood by and watched. That's not love, Jennifer. That's cowardice. He loves me in his own way, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it anymore. Maybe, Patricia said. But you deserve someone who loves you in every way. Someone who stands beside you, not behind you. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm dying, Patricia said simply. And I don't want to die knowing you're going to waste your life with my son if you're not truly happy. Patricia's condition deteriorated rapidly. She was in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid, sometimes delirious from the pain medication. Michael fell apart. He couldn't handle seeing his mother dying, so he spent most of his time in another room, avoiding the reality of her condition. I was the one who stayed with Patricia. I held her hand, moistened her lips with water, read to her when she was awake enough to listen.